Mark Jarvis. This kill targets one of the franchise's most sympathetic characters, a paraplegic camp counselor who never stood a chance against Jason's unstoppable violence, proving that no one is safe from his wrath. The scene builds tension perfectly as Mark sits alone in his wheelchair on the front porch of the counselor cabin during a heavy rainstorm. Mark appears vulnerable but content, having no idea that Jason is stalking the camp and systematically eliminating everyone he encounters. Jason emerges from the shadows, wielding his signature machete with deadly precision. Without hesitation or mercy, he strikes Mark directly in the face with the blade, delivering a brutal blow that would be fatal instantly. But Jason's cruelty doesn't end there. The impact sends both Mark and his wheelchair tumbling helplessly down a long flight of wooden stairs during the storm. Each impact against the steps creates these sickening thuds as Mark's body and the wheelchair crash and bounce uncontrollably downward. Jason doesn't discriminate based on physical ability or vulnerability, and this establishes him as truly merciless and shows that absolutely no one is off limits when he's hunting. But Jason's barehanded kills get even more disturbing than his blade work. Doug thought he was completely safe while relaxing in the shower, but Jason turned this classic horror movie scene into something infinitely worse than anything Hitchcock ever imagined. Doug enters the communal shower area after a long day. He's completely vulnerable, just like Janet Leigh's character decades earlier, and the audience naturally expects a blade to come slashing through the shower curtain at any moment. The scene deliberately builds this expectation as Doug washes himself, completely unaware that Jason has infiltrated the building and is systematically hunting down every counselor. But Jason doesn't follow the established playbook. He appears without any warning while Doug is washing off, catching him in the most defenseless position possible. Instead of using his machete or any other weapon, Jason relies purely on his supernatural strength. He grabs Doug's head with both massive hands, treating it like a fragile egg that needs to be crushed. With tremendous force, Jason smashes Doug's skull directly against the hard shower wall, using the bathroom's own structure as a weapon. The crushing sound is absolutely sickening. You can hear bones breaking and see Doug's expression change from confusion to terror to nothing at all in just seconds. But speaking of bone-crushing force, Jason's next victim learned why you should never try to challenge him in direct physical confrontation. Sheriff Garris. Sheriff Garris thought he could protect the innocent campers by confronting Jason head-on in a show of law enforcement authority, but he discovered that few movie deaths capture the realistic sound and feel of actual bones breaking like his brutal execution does. As the local sheriff, Garris represents order, justice, and protection, everything that Jason stands against. He arrives at the camp with the noble intention of stopping Jason's killing spree and saving lives, armed with confidence in his training and authority. The confrontation feels like it should be more evenly matched since Garris is a professional law enforcement officer with experience handling dangerous criminals, but Jason operates by different rules entirely. When Garris attempts to physically restrain the masked killer to prevent more deaths, Jason responds with methodical brutality that showcases his supernatural strength. Jason grabs the sheriff with both hands, positioning him like he's about to perform some kind of wrestling move. Then, with deliberate precision, Jason bends Garris violently backward, forcing his spine to curve in ways that human anatomy simply cannot accommodate. But sometimes, the most creative and memorable kills come from the simplest everyday objects. Sleeping bag victim. This kill became so iconic. The victim is just trying to get some sleep in the wilderness, wrapped safely in her sleeping bag for warmth and comfort during the cold night. Sleeping bags represent security, coziness, and protection from the elements. They're supposed to be a barrier between campers and the dangerous outside world. The scene initially feels peaceful and normal, with the victim settling down for what should be a restful night. Jason completely perverts this sense of security by turning the sleeping bag from protection into a prison. He zips the victim completely inside her sleeping bag, trapping her like a helpless worm in a cloth cocoon with absolutely no way to escape or defend herself. She's completely immobilized, unable to use her arms or legs, and can't even see what's happening around her. Then Jason grabs the entire bag and begins using it as a weapon, swinging the trapped victim against a large tree like she's a baseball bat and the tree is home plate. Each impact creates these absolutely sickening thuds as her body collides with the solid wood through the fabric. The victim is completely helpless throughout the entire ordeal, bouncing around inside the bag with no control over what's happening to her body. Axel thought the worst part of working the night shift at the morgue was staying awake while watching television, but he had absolutely no idea how creative Jason could get when given access to multiple torture methods in one location. This kill showcases Jason's methodical approach to inflicting maximum suffering through a deliberate two-part execution that extends the victim's agony. The morgue setting adds this layer of ironic commentary about death and the treatment of bodies, since Axel is literally surrounded by corpses as part of his job. He's supposed to be the one handling dead bodies, not becoming one himself. The scene builds slowly as Axel sits in his chair, completely absorbed by whatever program he's watching on the small television, making him an easy target for Jason's surprise attack. Jason approaches silently and begins his torture with surgical precision. First, he produces a hacksaw and begins sawing through Axel's throat while the morgue attendant is still alive and conscious. The sawing sawing motion is deliberate and slow, creating maximum pain as the blade cuts through flesh, muscle, and eventually bone. But Jason isn't satisfied with just one method of killing. He wants to make this death memorable. After the throat sawing has done its damage, Jason then grabs Axel's head and twists it completely around 180 degrees, rotating it until he's looking backward. But this isn't even the worst death on the list. Vinny discovered that you don't need to be the real Jason Voorhees to deliver absolutely unforgettable pain and trauma. This kill proves that even Jason's imitators in Part 5 learned to harness one of humanity's most primal evolutionary fears, fire, and to create lasting psychological damage in viewers. Part V features a copycat killer rather than the genuine Jason, but this imposter understood Jason's methods well enough to match his creativity and brutality. The fake Jason demonstrates that the techniques and mindset can be replicated by someone who studies Jason's approach to maximum suffering. This adds an interesting layer to the franchise by showing that Jason's influence extends beyond his physical presence. The confrontation happens quickly and without warning, as most of Jason's attacks do. The killer approaches Vinny unexpectedly, catching him completely off guard before he can react or defend himself. In one swift motion, the imposter grabs Vinny's face with both hands, positioning his head for what's about to happen next. The killer then shoves Vinny's face directly into a burning road flare, pressing his flesh against the intensely hot orange flame. The death is relatively quick compared to some of Jason's more elaborate tortures, but it's intensely painful and creates immediate visual and sensory horror. But nothing beats the original Jason's signature blade work. Andy Beltram. Andy was showing off his handstand walking skills to impress his friends at the lakeside cabin, but Jason decided to demonstrate his own precision timing and turn an athletic display into a grotesque exhibition of violence. This kill combines youthful showmanship with perfect violent timing for maximum visual impact and shock value. The scene begins innocently enough, with Andy performing acrobatic feats to entertain his companions during their weekend getaway. He's clearly proud of his physical abilities and wants to show off what he can do, walking on his hands down the hallway with impressive balance and control. It's the kind of harmless fun that young people engage in during vacation trips, completely unaware of the danger stalking them. Andy is completely focused on maintaining his handstand and moving forward, which means he's looking at the floor and has no peripheral vision to spot Jason's approach. Jason appears at the perfect moment, demonstrating the supernatural timing that makes him such an effective killer. He emerges from wherever he was hiding with his machete, already positioned for the attack. Without any hesitation, Jason swings the blade downward and splits Andy vertically in two from groin to head while he's still upside down in the handstand position. The vertical cut is infinitely more disturbing than a horizontal slash because it follows the natural lines of human anatomy in an unnatural way. Jason's timing is perfect, but his physical strength, that operates on a completely superhuman level. Julius Gaw. Julius thought his street boxing skills and fighting experience could save him during a desperate rooftop confrontation in Manhattan, but he learned the hard way that conventional combat training means absolutely nothing against supernatural strength and determination. The scene takes place on a New York City rooftop, giving this kill an urban, gritty feeling that's different from the usual camp and cabin settings. Julius represents street toughness and fighting ability. He's clearly someone who knows how to handle himself in physical confrontations and has probably won plenty of fights throughout his life. When cornered by Jason, he doesn't try to run or hide like most victims do. Instead, he decides to face the threat head-on like a man. Julius removes his shirt and puts up his fists, preparing for what he thinks will be a fair fight between two opponents. He throws multiple punches at Jason with proper boxing technique, landing solid hits that would definitely hurt or incapacitate a normal person. His punches connect solidly with Jason's body and masked face, and Julius puts his full strength behind each blow, but the punches have absolutely zero effect on Jason whatsoever. After absorbing multiple punches without any damage, Jason demonstrates why physical combat is useless against him. He responds with a single superhuman punch that completely decapitates Julius, separating his head from his shoulders with one blow. Julius's head flies off the roof and lands in a dumpster several stories below, while his headless body remains on the rooftop. Adrian Thomas. Adrian thought working aboard a futuristic space station would keep her completely safe from earthbound killers and primitive violence, but Jason proved that his creativity and brutality know no bounds when he's given access to advanced scientific equipment and laboratory tools. Adrian works as a scientist studying Jason's frozen body, which has been preserved for centuries after his apparent death on Earth. The irony is that she's literally studying the killer who's about to murder her, examining his physical structure while he's supposedly harmless. The scientists believe Jason is completely dead and frozen, making him safe to study and experiment on. Adrian approaches his body with scientific curiosity rather than fear, treating him like a specimen rather than a dangerous killer. This gives her a false sense of security because she thinks she's in control of the situation and that Jason poses no threat in his current state. But Jason awakens during the examination, proving once again that he's nearly impossible to kill permanently. He targets Adrian specifically, perhaps because she was taking liberties with his body while he was unconscious. Jason grabs her and drags her over to a laboratory workstation station equipped with various scientific instruments and chemicals. Jason submerges Adrian's face completely into a container of liquid nitrogen, which is stored at extremely low temperatures for scientific purposes. Liquid nitrogen freezes organic tissue instantly upon contact, turning her flesh and bones solid like ice within seconds. The extreme cold creates a unique type of agony that viewers rarely witness in horror films. But Jason isn't finished with just freezing. He has plans for a more elaborate conclusion. Trey Cooper. Trey learned that sharing a bed can be absolutely fatal when Jason Voorhees decides to get creative with bedroom furniture and ordinary household items. This kill blends multiple stab wounds with impossible anatomy manipulation in the confined space of a mattress and bed frame. The scene takes place in what should be a safe, intimate environment and bedroom, where Trey is relaxing and vulnerable. Beds represent rest, comfort, and security, making them one of the last places where people expect to encounter violence. Trey is in the process of settling down when Jason makes his entrance, turning what should be a peaceful moment into absolute terror. Jason begins his attack with multiple stab wounds throughout Trey's body, using his signature blade work to inflict serious damage. But unlike his typical quick kills, Jason takes his time with this victim, stabbing repeatedly in different locations to maximize pain and suffering. Each stab creates new wounds and fresh agony as Trey realizes he's being systematically tortured. But Jason isn't satisfied with conventional stabbing. He wants to create something more visually dramatic and impossible. After inflicting multiple wounds, Jason begins manipulating Trey's body in ways that completely defy human anatomy. Using his supernatural strength, Jason folds Trey's entire body in half inside the mattress, bending bones and joints in directions they were never meant to go. The folding process breaks multiple bones simultaneously and forces Trey's limbs into positions that are anatomically impossible for living humans. Eddie's death proves that sometimes slow, methodical torture creates far more psychological horror than quick violence or sudden death. Eddie is restrained against a tree in the woods, where no one can hear him scream or come to his rescue. He's conscious and aware of what's happening, but completely unable to fight back or escape. Jason slowly winds a leather belt around Eddie's eyes and head, taking time to position it properly rather than rushing through the process. This methodical approach creates anticipation and dread because both Eddie and the audience know something terrible is about to happen, but the timing is deliberately stretched out to maximize psychological impact. The killer then begins tightening the belt with deliberate precision, applying pressure gradually rather than all at once. The slow build allows Eddie to experience growing pain and panic as the pressure increases incrementally. He can feel the belt getting tighter and tighter, cutting off circulation and beginning to crush his skull, but the process happens slowly enough that he remains conscious throughout most of it. Eventually, the pressure builds to the point where Eddie's skull begins to cave inward from the sustained force of the tightening belt. The gradual crushing creates both physical and psychological horror because it combines the fear of suffocation with the terror of having your head slowly crushed. If you want to see more creative kills that push the boundaries of movie violence, click that video right there for the most painful deaths in Terminator.